So, I mean, it is an incredible solution if you are selling food to New York bodegas. If you're doing anything else, it's terrible.
Wow.
But if you're doing
That
that
is,
thing, it is really, really good.
but
And
they've got a market.
that's a big enough market to support them and support them as a business. Whereas in South Africa, if you said, "Well, we're going to provide all the quick service restaurants in Johannesburg," like it's just, even though that's quite a big segment, it's not big enough.
Welcome, builders, to How Would You Build It? The podcast that dives deep into the dynamic world of startups and product creation right here in South Africa and Africa. This show is more than just interviews. Every week, we sit down with the brilliant minds to provide a masterclass for building digital products amidst the challenges and opportunities unique to our continent. From seasoned founders to dynamic product managers, we uncover the unique stories and strategies behind some of the most innovative digital products being built. So for all the aspiring founders and product builders out there, you'll discover that each episode is a wealth of practical wisdom and local and actionable insights. Make sure to subscribe or follow wherever you listen to our podcasts and connect with us on social media for even more content. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, builders, to another episode of How Would You Build It? Another exciting episode. We've got quite a renowned name on the field. I've heard them. They've headhunted me in the past. I'm going to just label it headhunted me. But Rene, I'm really excited. We've got Skynamo. But before we move over to Skynamo, to Sam, Rene, how are you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, great, Bobby. Good to be here.
Yep. Diving into more startups, and what I love about Sam and Skynamo, thank you for joining. There's quite a nice history there for us to dive into. But how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing well. It's a short week, and anytime we have a short week is a good week.
Yeah, but it's confusing. I saw a post today. It's like, it's not quite Friday, but it's not quite Wednesday or something. It's like, it's just such a confusing day today.
It is seriously confusing. Like, can't figure it out. Even last night, couldn't figure it out. Why it's like half feels like Sunday, not quite like Sunday.
Why am I braaiing today? I should.
Well, on the upside, there was a lot of braai leftovers for lunch today, so that was good.
Yeah.
Exactly, the bright side. But Sam, Skynamo, for a lot of us in the tech space, have heard of you guys. You've been a prominent player in the field for a long time. But for those that don't understand Skynamo, have never heard of you guys, do you mind just giving us your elevator pitch and who you guys are and what you do?
Sure. So Skynamo plays in the Salesforce automation CRM space for wholesalers, manufacturers, and distributors. So it's very different to a normal CRM. When we say normal CRM, everyone thinks of Salesforce, in that we target customers who do business with other businesses on a regular basis. So they don't have an opportunity pipeline or something like this necessarily, or they have one, but that's not their primary business. Their primary business is, I sell to your business on a regular basis. And I've got a sales team out in the field that goes to see my customers and to manage those accounts, capture orders, gather data from the field, whatever it might be. Put that into Skynamo. So it's Android apps, iOS apps, web apps, cloud-based. Yeah.
Amazing. And you guys are based in Stellenboch, right?
Yeah, so based in Stellenbosch.
So Sam, I mean, these days, like most companies have these kind of tools, right? But I just want to go back to like how long you guys have been going, because when you started Skynamo, which was called Honeybee, right?
Yeah, well, it was actually called Field Office and then Honeybee and then Skynamo.
Field Office first, okay, but maybe take us back to Field Office days. I mean, let's talk about the environment, the setup. I don't believe iPads were out at that time. I mean, smartphones. I think the first iPhone was already out and some Android devices. But I mean, you guys were pioneering this when no one even knew this was something.
So we started in 2012. So the business actually started before that. I don't think any businesses start on the day of incorporation. That always, there's a bit of a history that happens a few days or a while before incorporation. So so we were really early. I think we did our first internal application on Android in 2010, somewhere around there. So it was really, really early. And then we incorporated the Field Office in May 2012. And back then, Blackberries were still a thing. When people wanted email on their mobile phone, they would, they'd go and buy a BlackBerry.
Still miss that keyboard though.
It was quite a while ago.
Sam, talking about BlackBerry, I missed that train of being a product manager, and I can only imagine what that must have been like trying to build responsive like apps or anything like that. I mean, Can you just share some of that story of building apps, in this kind of transition that we've gone through with the iPads and the iPhones and, not having BlackBerry anymore and all the devices that people have now? I mean, that's super challenging, right?
Yeah, so well, in some extent, it's actually a lot simpler now. So back then, we readily battled with was the availability of abstraction layers of good libraries and things like this. So I mean, we did our first versions were Java and Objective C, and then we went through the whole move there on iOS to Swift, and now we're busy with flatterization of everything. I don't know if
Really?
flatterization isn't verb, but it is now. So so trying to do the multi-platforms and things, and a lot of the stuff we had to build by hand. It just wasn't available in libraries in the early days. We had to build that stuff by hand, and nowadays, and it took us months sometimes. Now a lot of that stuff we can just we just get for free. We get it from Mahala, and it's cross-platform, so we get it twice for free. So it was really difficult dealing with that, and also with the user side of it. So quite a lot of the training we had in the early days was actually teaching people how to use Android. So we started off with just Android, and we targeted a specific device where we actually provided the device. We provided devices, SIM cards, insurance, all that kind of stuff. Because consumers didn't know how to buy. It was such a foreign idea. Android was so foreign. We literally had to teach people how to use the devices and how to use the OS and buy the devices on their behalf to get them to adopt it. Now, everyone, you don't have to teach the people that stuff anymore.
So, Sam, I want to go back to the founding story. I mean, it's you and I had a chat. This wasn't Sam sitting one day and thinking, I've got an app idea, let's build it and find a customer. It was much more organic. You guys were part of EMSS. Can you maybe explain what EMSS is or was at the time and still is today, I believe? And then how that resulted in you guys ending up building a product and maybe share a bit about that journey.
Sure. So we were called EMSS back then, so Electromagnetic Software and Systems, if memory serves. We're now called AlphaWave, and so very engineering name. Our logo was a surface integral, which is really catchy amongst the engineers. So we were a business that was heavily focused around electromagnetics and different aspects of electromagnetic engineering, and we still got quite a lot of that in the AlphaWave group today. But what was happening there around 2010, 2011 is we were busy with trying to make a strategic shift as EMSS. So we were busy shifting out of being electromagnetics focused and looking more broadly at the skills that we had and thought, well, what other businesses could we go into that wasn't built around this hardcore core electromagnetic competency of ours? So at that stage, I was running a business called Antenna Magus, which was the first business that I founded. So again, inside of that hardcore electromagnetic space, we had a company called EMSS Consulting, which is part of the group. And EMSS Consulting focuses on compliance of base station antennas. So we've got teams that go and visit site, and they make sure that the sites are compliant with the relevant standards around public exposure and occupational exposure to RF hazards. As part of that work, we developed a tool initially for internal use around managing the compliance. So so it's managing all the equipment at the site and everything like that, managing compliance certificates, and then all the data, all the supporting data around that compliance. So that was a web tool called Ixus, IXUS. So that software team, when Android came out, they were very excited, and they thought we could resolve a lot of the paper problems that we have in Ixus using Android. So back then, the way that we managed compliance was the teams out in the field would at the start of every week, they'd get a box full of papers, and the box full of papers would say you need to go and visit these sites, all the information about the sites, access control, all the relevant information. They would go and do an assessment, and during the assessment, they would record things. They would take photos, record GPS locations of signage, all that sort of stuff. They'd take that, they'd burn it onto CDs, put that into envelopes, and then post it back to the office. And then at the office, people would take the CDs, they'd review the data, and then issue the compliance certificate. So what the software team did was they moved that process onto Android. So now instead of having to ship the papers and whatever, you just retrieve the data from a database and you could access it. And then as they captured data, that capture also happened real time and the delivery to the office was real time. So it took out sort of a week, 2 week latency out of the system. So let's say that somebody went to a site and then they didn't take a photo of something, or the photo was blurry or whatever it was, wasn't fit for purpose. We would realize that a week late, and they've moved on. They're in a different province now. So what this did is it took that latency out. They could immediately go back, retake that photo, and this really, really was a game changer for us as an internal system in terms of efficiency. So this threw it wide open. So the X's product is something we sell. I'm fairly certain we're number one in the world, but it's a fairly niche application, managing base station compliance. But this team, we felt at that stage. So the CEO of AlphaWave, Frans Meyer, and Marinus van Wyk, who is the MD of EMSS Consulting, they felt like there was more that could be done here. And they threw it open to the team. They had a big brainstorming session, and they came up with this idea that if this technology has been so revolutionary for our business, aren't there businesses outside of electromagnetics where we can bring this expertise and deliver similar results? So Frans and Marinus approached me at that stage, and they said to me, "What do you think, Sam? Do you think that there could be business here? Write up a business plan for us, kind of as a consultant," because I'd left the previous company by that stage. So I wrote up a business plan. They liked it, and they said, "Why don't you implement it?" So I joined the team, and started building what's Skynamo today.
So Sam, how much of that business plan that you wrote actually played out the way you planned, or was it like day one, chuck it away and pivot and hustle from there?
No, so it never works out the way you plan it. But so the initial plan was we actually stuck to the plan for quite a while, for probably about 3 years. So the plan was to do contracts and sell services, writing Android app, web app, so having a web database, web app, Android apps, and writing that for other businesses. So custom software,
custom solutions for field Salesforce activities.
Yes, correct. But we wanted to focus on business applications that had a field component and an office component. So we didn't want to compete with a generic software development company. We wanted to focus on this web app, and there's a lot of nuance in it, in terms of there's a lot of data centrally. The devices at that stage, I mean, the devices really weren't very powerful. The internet connections weren't very reliable. So we were looking for data-intensive applications where because we had a lot of work and a lot of IP around the sync protocol, how we recover information from those databases, store it locally to deal with the bad internet connections and all these sorts of things. And so we wanted to find applications that were in that niche and where we believed we had expertise and IP. So we went around looking for applications like this, tendered for a lot of work, didn't get any of it. We did one project outside of what is now Skynamo, which was around digital terrestrial TV rollout, which obviously never happened. But we were paid for the work, which is great.
Yeah, it probably would have worked well for the TV rollout, but yeah, obviously that never happened.
We had a phenomenal. We partnered with Pointing Antennas on that one, and they had this phenomenal little device that you could screw into the set-top box to validate the installation, to pay the installer. It was really a very clever system that they devised. It's just never happened. So.
Might still happen. Hopefully, software is still relevant by then. Sam, tell me. Okay, so you were a software services company looking for these things. Then you went into building this as a product. Can you maybe expand a bit on that? But also, very importantly, I think one of the biggest problems when building a SaaS product, which is what Skynamo is today, is getting that first customer. Can you maybe share your experience and anything you've learned from how you came about your first customer?
Sure. So 2 of the tenders that we tendered for and didn't get were for sales reps specifically in alcohol distribution. So they were for big alcohol distribution companies. We tendered for it and didn't get those contracts. And we believed that part of the reason that we didn't get those contracts is, we were a bunch of electromagnetic engineers. We didn't have the track record in the let's call it the domain specific track record in order to win those tenders. So we had the team, right? The team was sitting, they were employed by EMSS, and we wanted to build credibility in the space. So I was lamenting one day to one of my friends that we tendered for these things and not gotten them. And he said, well, I've got a team of 4 people. He had his own little alcohol brand called Green Mamba that he was busy launching. And he had 4 sales reps. And he'd written a little custom CRM for them. And, it worked, didn't work, but he said, he'd be keen for us to write something that would work for his sales reps. So we started off just replicating the CRM that he'd already built, which is a web app, and then making that interact with an Android app. So yeah, we built it, and that worked pretty well for him. But he was a non-paying customer. So after I think 3 months or something of using it, he agreed to pay for the actual tablet and data costs. But the software was still free to him. And then I was showing it to a friend one evening who was a winemaker at Clarke, and he said, you should show this to my boss. So I thought, great. Went and showed it to his boss, and his boss says, this looks amazing. We'll take 4. Send me the paperwork. And we didn't have paperwork. Made up the price on the spot.
You couldn't even chat GPT it. I mean, you had to go
Good
figure it out.
I actually took an end user license agreement from some software. Yeah, there we go. Copy pasta, find replace, sent it. He signed it, and we actually operated on that paperwork for a good couple of years before someone pointed out that it was completely irrelevant. It was like written around on-prem software that was installed somewhere.
I love it.
But did the trick. It gave us the kind of the substance we needed to get customers. So that was customer number 1, and then customer number 2, Frans Mayo was who's the CEO of Alpha Wave. He was playing in a golf day, and there was a sales rep sitting on a wet hole, playing on a tablet. And so he asked the sales rep, what do you do with that tablet? And he's like, we don't know, but there was a lot of hype. There was high on the hype cycle, the mobile hype cycle at that stage. And so they'd all been bought tablets to use for productivity, but they didn't have any actual tools that were built around that use case. I went to go and see, so got the name of his manager, went to go and see his manager, and they took 30 licenses. So,
and I love that, Sam, because it's almost like you see the rise of this hardware. Like hardware is coming out, and people can, people have a device. The company buys a device because we need it. But that almost leads to the ability to now solve old problems in new creative ways. And I think we at the same time, we're looking now at the capability of big data, machines, AI. We're almost at the same kind of wave now where people are buying processing power, or they're buying GPUs, big companies, and those things are literally sitting there going, where are the old problems that we can now solve in new creative ways?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we need this phase of the hype cycle when you've got those people who they can just see, they don't know exactly how this technology is going to make their businesses, how it's going to solve those existing old problems. They don't know exactly how, but they've got such a strong sense that it's going to be revolutionary for their business that they're prepared to, pump that money in and say, let's do a rollout. Let's buy tablets for everybody. Let's buy GPUs. Don't know exactly what they're going to do, but they're going to change the world. So
pumping NVIDIA's share price.
But it's super exciting. I've been on a project where that exactly, actually, Rainier, you met them recently, Averly. It was a very similar journey, right? There was an old process, an old way of doing things. It was in the real estate, but now they could start taking photos. There was like all these things that you could start doing that you were disrupting an old legacy industry of doing things. So I just wanted to ask you very quickly, you went from 1 user to 2 users to 30 licenses. once people start utilizing this thing, you start getting all this feedback and start realizing the problems you're actually solving, because what you initially thought, it evolves. That's just like anything. So just your learnings on that initial scale, and you started finding that product market fit that everyone talks about.
Yeah, it was wild. It was also we were fairly new in cloud computing, so there's a lot of technology issues that we faced initially. Back then, we were with AfriHost, and you had to phone them if you wanted a new VM, and then you'd get it 24 hours later. Which is just bizarre to think of nowadays. But there are a lot of conceptual. People like to talk about tech debt. Our chief product officer, he's actually coined a term. I don't know if he coined it, but internally he's popularized it, called conceptual debt. And so the decisions we made, the model choices that we made, the way that in 2012 or 2013 around Green Mamba, and those things are still baked into our product today. And we actually need to, for some of those things, we need to go in there and we need to actually, that core concept we modeled incorrectly. Initially all of our customers were in alcohol. So I think our first 10 customers were all in alcohol. And we had a hard-coded field called liquor license number inside of our application, because you can't trade with anybody who doesn't have a liquor license. And then we got a customer who was in tires, and they weren't in alcohol. They needed everything in the whole product except this liquor license number. So we just told them, just don't look at it. Just ignore it.
Forget that validation there, that red thing there. Just forget it for now, please.
just don't worry about it. And I mean, we had that in for years. We had liquor license numbers, a hard-coded field.
That's hilarious.
In the application, and as you say, it was really because it was quite a lot of it was accidental. We didn't even realize that tires, we were a bunch of engineers, so we didn't necessarily know, we didn't understand the tire industry and how it worked when we got our first tire customer.
Yeah.
So
there you have it, right? Yeah, that's amazing. So there you go. You go from the alcohol to tires to raising $32 million. I mean, they must have seen something you're doing right. Can you tell us about that story, please?
And the timing, Sam. I mean, this was right before
you're
COVID.
skipping a phase. Right before COVID. So we were operating as field office, and then we accepted that the product we'd started selling. So we were still busy trying to win contracts and stuff on the side. And we had the idea of being a multi-product company. And then around 2016 or so, we abandoned that, and we came to the acceptance that Honeybee at that stage was sucking all of our resource. I mean, we couldn't do anything else. So we decided to focus on Honeybee, change the name because at that stage the product was called Honeybee, changed the name of the company to Honeybee. And we started focusing on that. And as part of that, we wanted to internationalize. We had a very strong desire to internationalize. We were profitable at that stage, but we were growing so quickly in South Africa that all the money every month we grew. At that stage the numbers were crazy. Like you'd grow 20% in a month. Coming off a low base is a big deal. We were just consuming all that growth in the domestic operation, and so we decided that if we wanted to grow internationally, we needed to do that on the back of funding. We weren't gonna self-fund this. Part of the thinking at that stage was also that there was a closing window of opportunity. So there was still a lot of small players in the market, and we saw consolidation as inevitable. And you need to be there if you want to play in the consolidation phase. So we thought that because obviously every founder needs to, or every founding team needs to think about whether or not taking on equity is the right choice for their business, or whether this should be a slow growth self-funded journey, or whether we need to take outside funding. So we decided that we wanted to take outside funding, tried locally for quite a while to raise that funding unsuccessfully. We had one or two offers, but the the amount of money that we could raise locally was just the amount of money was too small. So you take somebody onto your cap table, but they could only bring 10 million rand, and now you're going to sit with an incredibly fractured cap table if you just and you're going to have to raise again in like 3 months time or 4 months time.
2018, 19, I'm assuming is the time. There's still not a lot you can do with 10 million rand, let's be honest.
Especially once you take it into dollars. Once you take it into dollars, it's not a substantial amount of money. So at that stage, also, I think that over the past 6 years, I've not been in it. I'm an observer of it, but I think that the local landscape has changed quite a bit. But at that stage, there was a lot of money there's a lot of CSR type money. So they have an Africa fund and they want to invest in an African tech business, but they want your technology to solve an African problem. So it's overseas CSR money. Whereas what we were looking for funding to go and solve a problem in the US or the UK. So it was a bit of, if you just look at where the money was, it wasn't really on trying to find companies like us and fund companies like us. So we were fortunate enough so Five Elms reached out to us. So we were in the fundraising. I joined Endeavour, the Entrepreneur Network, and through the FNB Innovation Awards, I was busy trying to do the fundraising using the Endeavour Network internationally. Yeah, Five Elms reached out to me. They said, we're looking at companies in this space. Do you have time for an introductory call? I said, sure. I had an hour with them. They said, we're interested. We'd love to know more about the company. I said, I happen to be in the States next week. Can I come visit you? They said, sure. So I came, spent 6 hours with them, left Kansas City, left their office, got an airplane, flew to San Jose, landed in San Jose, and there was a term sheet in my inbox saying, we like what you're doing. We want to be part of it. We think you leader in the field.
That's quite a jump, from 10 million rand to $32 million. That's a hell of a jump.
30, yeah.
You pinched yourself and said, what just happened?
The jump to there happened. It was different. It's a long story. I think you're going to put your podcast listeners to sleep here. The deal went through a number of permutations. So that was already back in 2018. It took us just over a year to get to the final deal structure. To be honest, I was naive about a lot of the rules and regulations that we would face in trying to put a deal like this together. I think it continues to be difficult for a foreign private equity firm who isn't used to investing in South Africa to make an investment in South Africa. A lot of our foreign exchange control rules and things like this, these are very foreign to. They were foreign to me at that stage, so it was a rude awakening, and they're foreign to those private equity companies who are used to dealing with the US or Europe.
Yeah, exchange control. That's what the Startup Act is campaigning for.
Exchange control.
To get some relaxation on that, because at the moment, pretty much what any company is doing that wants to operate or raise funding from overseas is they just domicile somewhere else, and then it's never a South African company as far as the foreign investor is concerned.
But the challenge is actually getting ownership in the foreign company. So for you as a founder to have shares in a foreign company is difficult under the Exchange Control Act.
Yes.
Specifically loop structures, so where that company owns South African assets.
Yes.
So
and then you get double tax.
If Cyril wants to make friends with Elon Musk, he's going to have to start changing some of those rules, eh?
Yeah. So look, I do have empathy with the rule makers. I'm not a rule maker. I'm a tech guy. But I have empathy with them because the reason that they're having to create such complicated rules is because of the number of people who are trying to dodge tax. So they're trying to get their fair share of tax. In the meantime, by trying to get their fair share of tax, they make it really difficult for people who are just trying to run legitimate businesses to just operate. It makes it cumbersome to just operate.
So Sam, after the fundraise, you obviously set out to expand to the US. So firstly, I mean, you have all this money. Like, did you feel like any pressure to start spending? And then secondly, maybe share a bit about the experience in the US, and what that was like.
Sure. Yeah. So the pressure to spend, I think, came from the 3 years that it took to get money. So you've had 3 years to plan what you're going to do with it. So you've got a lot of ideas. The money landed sort of late 2019, so we made the announcement early 2020. We did because of the Christmas season. We didn't want it to miss the PR cycle, and we immediately started. So we'd already, before the money landed, we'd already been interviewing people to appoint in the US. We already had a guy in London. So we basically pulled the trigger on that. So we established an office in Atlanta. So we did a roadshow in 2019 to try to figure out where we want to base ourselves in the US. And we had a couple of first choice places, and then we made the decision based on where we found what we believed to be the right person. And so that was Atlanta for us. Went to Atlanta, signed a rental contract, signed an employment contract, flew to London, signed a rental contract. And then I was busy installing the Wi-Fi in the London office, and I got a phone call from the travel agent. And she said to me, this COVID thing looks like it might be real. They're starting to cancel flights. I think you need to go home, and you need to go home now. So that was the Wednesday, and I think that they'd started canceling flights, and then it was the next week that we went into hard lockdown.
Crazy.
So of that rental contract we signed in London, I think we only occupied those offices for a couple of weeks. In that,
Oh gosh, that's soul destroying.
It was soul destroying. So we were lucky. We were just we can't ascribe it to any form of skill. Just straight lucky in terms from a timing perspective. So we went into COVID with a really strong balance sheet. And that just gave us options as a business that other businesses didn't have. At that stage, our single biggest client sector was food and beverage. A lot of our customers at that stage were selling into on-site consumption food and beverage, so restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. And this all came to a complete grinding halt. The sales reps, merchandisers just weren't welcome in stores anymore. There were limits to the number of people that could go, and the essential workers and all the rest of that stuff. So our customers just got a hiding. And then that hiding obviously passed on up the chain to us. So we were facing a battle domestically in terms of dealing with the consequences of COVID. And then we were facing similarly. So our plan with the US was, business plans. Our plan with the US was to make sure that we always had someone from our leadership team in our office there on a rotating basis. We were even looking at renting a flat long term. So we'd always have a place to base ourselves. And then with COVID, we just couldn't travel. So we had a new team dealing with a new region, and we had nobody who understood our business and our product on the ground. It was only after 8-9 months that we were actually able to get somebody on the ground there. So that 2020 was quite a rough year to try to launch your product overseas. So we did a hard reset.
So it's a bit of bittersweet, right? Because on one side you have the balance sheet that's really strong in a time where you need it, but on the other side you can't do what you want to do because everything's locked down.
Yeah, it was quite intense. And I can't sing Five Elms' praises loudly enough. It wasn't what they signed up for. We're a field sales business. So our customers send sales representatives to their customers' premises. Which in 2020 was not a very fashionable business to be in. So, when I speak quite often to other entrepreneurs, they're thinking about doing similar things. And I cannot stress enough how much time you should spend selecting the right funding partner, because and it's really those moments where, like, we're dealing with a situation that nobody in this room signed up for. Right? It's not what I thought we were going to be doing. It's not what they thought we were going to be doing, but it is now a reality. And what you want is a constructive partner in those difficult times. It's extremely, if you've got the wrong
that, because like you said, your partner needs to really be approachable. You need to have some very uncomfortable conversations with them, with a plan of action that you can't really see out. I mean, that must have been rather difficult to deal with, everyone, all the stakeholders at the table.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing is it was reality. Like it was kind of an incontrovertible fact, which is, I think, easier than when it's just opinion, and I think and market conditions or whatever. It was difficult, but everybody, everybody just stepped in and said, okay, what do we know? What don't we know?
Because it was
What
a
bets are
moving
we going to
target
take, for
as well,
example?
right?
Yes.
It was like, I mean, during those times, it was like we would wait for Cyril to tell us what we could or couldn't do. But that wasn't just here; it was everywhere, right? So it's like, do you pull out? Do we just wait a little bit longer? You know what I mean? I can only imagine that frustration when you've got all this money, you've got all these plans, you've got all these expectations, and it's leaning on things that you can't control.
100%. I think you summarized it very well. And I think at that stage, we were all naive with retrospect. When we did that first hard lockdown, we thought, okay, cool, in 3 weeks' time, everything's going to go back to normal. We just need a 3 week bunker and then we're going to be fine.
Sure.
it was just like,
Chaos.
didn't happen that way. Yeah.
So,
But
so
we had a hard reset in 2020. Yeah, sorry, Rennie.
now go for it, Sam. I'd love to hear about the reset and your second attempt to go in and capture market share there.
So we had a hard reset in 2021. We were like, 2020 is behind us. Let's move forward. We new team in the US, and we could travel again. Travel was difficult. We had to do those 2 week green country stays. So it meant being away from your family for sort of 5-6 weeks at a time, just so that you could attend a meeting. Because once you were there, you didn't want to just leave. So that was personally different to the challenge that we thought, and we discovered quite a lot of competitors in the US that we hadn't anticipated or that we didn't know about when we were doing the research from South Africa. Specifically, small niche competitors. I mean, if you a lot of them, they haven't updated the copyright sign on their website still says 2004, but they're there. They're just,
Wow.
they're not on LinkedIn. They're not on the internet. Like digital research isn't going to get you there.
Sure.
And they're
What
small.
feet on the
Local
ground
companies.
made you find them?
Yeah, feet on the ground. When you're actually there and you're actually talking to customers, like there's no substitute for customers, and your customers tell you what you need to know about the local market. So I think one of the things we discussed with you was how we do it differently and how we're currently doing it. I think that with the benefit of hindsight, the mistake we made was thinking that we had a closing window of opportunity and misreading how quickly the market would consolidate. Now you could argue that the market hasn't consolidated partly because of COVID. The investment cycles have gone weird. There was so much money for anything in 2022 that wasn't field related. There was home productivity, digitization. Everyone's working from home now, the new normal, and the funding glut that came on the back of all this economic stimulus and everything that went there. And now we swung the opposite way in 2023, where no one was investing in anything, and now the investment market's all hype focused around AI. I don't think that the investment market has gone the way that we would have predicted in 2019. So I think that in 2019 it was a fair assumption to say in 2020 and 2021 we're going to start seeing consolidation in the space, but obviously it didn't play out that way. So the approach that we're taking now is organic growth in the US specifically. So we have great customers. We have a number of great customers that we acquired in the US, but the revenue that we get from them doesn't cover the cost of operations in the US. It's just very expensive to have boots on the ground, and specifically a critical mass. So what we're doing at the moment is looking after those customers to the best of our ability from South Africa and from the UK, and we're growing organically. So one of the nice things about sales in the space where we are is people move around. So they'll go from being a sales rep at this company to a sales manager at that company, and then maybe a sales director at the next company. And so if we
they want their
can,
technology to follow them.
Exactly. They become comfortable with the technology. They know what it can do. And then we come in with a hot lead and a referral. So
Nice.
it's slow because you have to wait kind of for this natural time constant to play out for those
Mm.
referrals to happen. But it's building. We're growing nicely in the US.
Mm.
And once we reach the point where we've got enough revenue in the region to justify a team, then
Mm.
we can go and start a team again with boots on the ground. And in hindsight, it's the
Mm.
way that I do it. Is I try to acquire one or two customers, service them, learn about the local market, all those sort of niche competitors that you're facing, and then just grow a little bit slower. And then once you've got,
Mm.
yeah, sorry, I have to take a breath because the term product market fit is intensely overutilized. Lacks meaning. But let's say once you've got a reasonable revenue, once you've got $1 million, $2 million in a specific market segment, then you can say, right, now we know that our product is meeting the needs of the market with confidence, and then you can go really aggressive in terms of scaling.
Mm. And tell me about that. Okay, so there's a few questions I'd love to dive into, but one of them is obviously pricing, like how you managed pricing across these different regions, considering your product, and then the competitiveness, because it kind of speaks to pricing too, right? So I mean, if I look at the site and if I try and look into Skynamo, I mean, I'm sure you've got quite a lot of competition out there. So what you're saying is that stickiness is there. So once somebody uses the product, they're happy to stay with it, right? So now that's the price point versus other competitors. Can you just tell us how Skynamo is dealing with those three elements?
Sure, it's difficult. So Skynamo is not the cheapest in the market. We're not a low cost competitor. A lot of the low cost competitors, they come and they go. Most of our customers care about the longevity of their suppliers, and there's and operating at scale is expensive. So we do every now and then a company comes along and they're cheap and they're three people, but it's not just sustainable. They're not going to be there for very long. We don't stress too much when that happens. We know that the price point we charge is reasonable for the amount of work that goes into the background. No one cares about ISO 27001 security compliance until they're hacked. And then they realize that, oh, this is actually something that's worth
Oh, wait.
paying for.
Oh, there's
Oh,
a value
wait.
prop. Are you
Yeah, so,
that?
correct.
Thank you. Now we need it
The,
all of a sudden.
exactly. And it's an expensive service to provide, right? To provide people with
Mm.
GDPR compliance and all the rest of that, we have to do work. And they don't, and the, people don't necessarily
Mission.
see
Absolute
that
mission.
stuff. Yeah, backups, availability, disaster recovery. There's a lot of sort of work that goes into offering the quality of service that we can. So we're able to do that. So let's call that competitors on the bottom end. But then we've also got a lot of competitors, companies that are similar to us that we focus on. So there, our primary, we focus on a product differentiator of integration. So we the anti-SAP approach, basically. So you can have any warehouse management system as long as it's SAP. So we believe that if you look at the consumerization trend, people expect Strava to work with their Garmin watch and their Wahoo thing. People want to live in a connected ecosystem
Mm.
of their choice,
Mm.
and so that's kind of one of our competitive advantage. Our key competitive advantage is we invest a lot of time and effort in figuring out how to integrate with systems companies
Mm.
have already got. So we make it an easy, we're nice to play with inside of the ecosystem. So a lot of
And
our customers have got legacy ERPs. So they've got something they installed in 2012. And that thing runs the sensors on their conveyor belts. And if they upgrade to the new version of that thing, then their sensors on their conveyor belts stop working. And that's too expensive for them to do because they're trying to buy a CRM. So quite a lot of what we
yeah.
do is is trying to figure out how to work with really old things in a nice way.
And as we move along, so does technology age, and you want to integrate with old systems, and yours is upgrade. But that is what the value prop becomes, right? Because now you're doing all the hard yards for the people, and they can just integrate it easily, and everyone wants it in one place, right? They're like, that's kind of the key. We want it here, must talk to everything that I do, please.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and so that's kind of the key competitive positioning for us.
So Sam, I want to talk about the local market. Like, do you think? I mean, you guys built a SaaS product, and it's doing well in the local market. Are there many opportunities like that in South Africa, or obviously we know there's lots in America. I mean, just looking at your investors portfolio, like there's so many SaaS companies that they invested in, like it's crazy. But South Africa, they're few and far between. Like there's not a lot of them. Is there scope? Do you think it's underutilized or an area that should get a lot more focus on entrepreneurs to build specific SaaS solutions for specific industries?
So I think a lot of the challenge comes in with the breadth of customer. Can you get critical mass in a segment in South Africa? And for a lot of segments, I think the answer is no, unfortunately. So if you are one of our competitors in the US is hyper focused on food services to New York bodegas. So, I mean, it is an incredible solution if you are selling food to New York bodegas. If you're doing anything else, it's terrible.
Wow.
But if you're doing that thing, it is really, really good. And that's a big enough market to support them and support them as a business. Whereas in South Africa, if you said, well, we're going to provide all the quick service restaurants in Johannesburg, like it's just, even though that's quite a big segment, it's not big enough. So my opinion is that South Africa is phenomenal because the competitive intensity is far lower than it is overseas. So it's a great place to start. But I think that if you want to get big, you need to have preferably from day one, not like us. I mean, we bumbled our way to our business, but if you've got a clear plan for internationalization, so you know that I'm going to establish my product, figure out what it needs to do and how the industry works in a less competitive environment. So think of it as a nursery pool, right? So you're a fish in a nursery pool. You can grow from fingerling to adolescent, but your ultimate strategy, if you want to get to being a whale, is you're going to have to go international. The domestic market is just small, specifically for SaaS, where you're trying to provide a very specific solution.
And is Africa not an option for you? Do you feel like it's the same concept? I mean, your bodega example is so fitting. Do you think that it's worth going into Africa, or are you just going to find a whole bunch of more South Africas where the market is just so small with a lot of learnings along the way that it just doesn't make it worthwhile?
So we're present in Africa, primarily exported by our clients. So many South African companies have operations in other countries. And so, they're our client domestically, and then they take our product to their operations in the rest of Africa. And on the back of that, we have gone into, and we've got customers that are only Zimbabwe. They have no South African presence. So we do have them. But the cost of doing business is really, really high for the volume of business. So if we send a team to Harare to go and see all our customers, the flight costs the same as sending somebody to London. And the number of clients is just so small. So the cost of doing business it just doesn't make sense for our business. But there are many businesses that have got a solution which is solving a problem in a way that means that the international competitors can't be present. And then it's great to do business in Africa. It's less competitive, from a culture perspective. I think it's easier.
So what I'd like to just quickly touch on is I'm assuming that the people that you hired when you went to the States were salespeople because you wanted to get customers. I mean, that's the first step, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to kind of get people to start understanding the product-led approach where the product starts teaching. Can you explain your product strategy at the moment? Where what are you building? I'd like to understand the team that you have that's building the product, that's kind of getting that product-led approach instead of a sales-led approach. So you're building the right things,
Sure.
you're getting the right feedback, and you're kind of doing that. Because I think a lot of companies that I'm getting exposed to just struggle with that completely. They don't have a good team typology, and they don't have a good product sense of understanding what should go into that backlog in that pipeline. So can you just help? How is Skynamo doing it right?
Well, whether we're doing it right or not, time will tell. But we can tell you what we're doing. We believe it. We obviously believe it's right. So what we're doing is we are focusing on. I keep using the word niches, but these are, let's call it sub-segments of users. So we're looking for a couple of characteristics. So we're looking for a segment where we already have customers. That is non-negotiable. People need to be using our product today in that segment. Then the next thing we're looking for is we want to have a low market share in that segment. And then we ask the question, why is our market segment so low? So we know that our product works in this segment because we have customers. We have food service customers supplying New York bodegas, right? So we know that our product does work in this segment. We also know that we we're not dominant. We know that we have, single-digit percentages of market share. And then we ask the question, why? And we ask that question why by speaking to the customers that we already have. So you've got product managers speaking to people who are already using your product, understanding their needs, feeding that into the backlog, and then watching to see whether or not, obviously people hypothesize about what features are going to actually solve their problems. They might not actually solve their problems once they're built. But once we've built them, then we can start to see whether or not it's solving the problem. So it's taking a very strong iterative approach. When you build it behind a feature flag. You might need to only roll it out to, a segment of users because, you don't know whether it's going to be scalable and all the rest. You don't want other people to adopt it if you're actually going to deprecate it.
So do you give the mandate, or are you allowing the product managers to go and sort of figure it out by doing the research, coming to you and saying, hey, we believe X? Or are you saying, hey, as Skynamo, we believe X? Or like, where's the autonomy in the team sitting?
No, so we've got a chief product officer, and a lot of so he has veto on everything. But the product managers are speaking to the customers directly. They speak to the customers. They interview the customers. And they're saying one of our product managers was just in the UK now with our customers on the floor of a show, and he comes back to the development team. So our customers are using our products at a show. So we weren't exhibitors. We were there. He was there just watching how our customers are using our product.
Love it.
In person, and he's bringing that knowledge back to the development team, and he sits inside of the team. So
No, I love it.
We've said this is the segment we want to be amazing for. We want to deliver great value inside of the segment. Now we're just trying to figure out what it is that we need to do and optimize to be able to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. Renier, before I just carry on talking product, please take over and ask Sam some questions before we do the lightning round.
No, it's all good. I think this was fun. So let's go lightning.
Okay, cool. All right. So Sam, I could absolutely double down into more product stuff, but we'll leave it there. The lightning round, just a few questions, very easy. First thing that comes to your mind, you can shoot your answer. Okay. So I can see a couple of books behind you. So if you were to recommend a book to not necessarily a founder, but anyone kind of building a SaaS product, a book that you recommend they should read?
Disciplined Entrepreneurship by Bill Olet. It's phenomenal. Okay. Love that book. I buy them 20 at a time. Anytime somebody comes and asks me advice, they leave with a book.
This one.
Yeah, Renier's going to show off quickly.
Oh, there we go. You see, he's got it.
Nice.
I wish I'd had that book.
Cool. And then, so out of all the lessons of building, getting funding and everything like that, from your lessons of building Skynamo, what advice would you give to an upcoming founder that's, starting a new SaaS product?
Get outside of the building. Get into your customer's space. They should get uncomfortable that you're inside their space too much. Really, a lot of SaaS founders tend to be technocentric. Get close to your customer.
I love it. Absolutely. Can't agree more. What is your favorite South African built app that is not Skynamo?
Sure.
What do you use the most that you know is built into like a South African app?
I wonder. I don't even know. Because it's going to be, look, from a most frequently used, it's going to be my banking app, I think. But I think that the one actually that changes our lives the most and touches our lives the most is D6. So I think it's been a game changer. It touches our lives every single day.
Which one? Sorry, D6.
School
Don't you have children in school?
He doesn't.
Clearly, I don't. Clearly, I don't. I'll go speak to my friends.
You cannot know what is happening with your own children unless you read it on D6.
Okay, right. Good to know. I'll go speak to some friends.
Your kids cannot buy a sandwich at a tuck shop unless you interact with D6.
There you go.
Okay. Really, I can resonate. And then lastly, Sam, as part of the open letter and how would you build it, thank you for joining. But can you give us a recommendation for another founder or somebody in sort of the industry that we should interview and bring into our community?
Have you interviewed Essia Marais of InRange?
No.
So it's another AlphaWave company.
They took us to the range once.
Okay, so Renier has met them. I try and always play the game, has Renier met them already?
So Stellenboch is a small,
well, Sam,
small
thank
place.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have to, that's why I was hoping you give us a United States guy. Maybe Elon Musk can come on. Guys, thank you very much, Sam. It was great to hear the Skynamo journey. Like I said in the beginning, I've heard Skynamo is on the streets for a long time, so it was nice to hear inside the story of what's happening there. Thank you very much for joining. Appreciate it.